Right. Are we recording? I believe we're recording. The madman appears in his Hawaiian shirt. Again. Hopefully this is recording properly. But certain conditions are in place right now. What is the date today? I need to know this anyway. Saturday, April 9th. April Fool's plus 8. So, it does look like the lighting is not good. There's a problem with the camera on this iPad. It's actually a part of the cover glass cracked. And there was a crack that went straight through the middle of the camera, and it refracted the light in a way that made it completely useless. So I literally had to take a little piece of the little broken edge of the actual glass covering of the screen surround and pull it off. And it actually allowed the camera to work again. And that's a good thing, because here's my phone. So you can see there's green lines running through it, which is obviously an indication of the screen being cracked and broken, which this really just amounts to, for the time being, just a minor inconvenience. Sometimes when you're texting or trying to read something, those green lines are right where you need to read, and you can't change that. It's a cracked screen that got moisture under it. iPhone 12. Not impressed with the product. In some ways, it was a lot more elegant, and it had advancements in it that made it great. But in some ways, it didn't live up to the hype, which was that my understanding was that they came with a new kind of glass that was supposedly wouldn't crack. And for that reason, I never got a case for it. Well, I sadly found out that, my God, oh yes, it does crack it quite easily. And so I had to replace a broken screen. And it turns out that if the back glass breaks, the gyros it has physical gyros that will malfunction if the glass is cracked. And the camera won't work. Can't take photos. So all that amazing technology in that camera, and how great it is, and what it can do, all these fancy tricks without a flash at night and stuff and take pictures, if the back glass gets a crack in it, there are little gyroscopes that get unbalanced, and it won't take pictures. Yay! So in the old days, when your iPhone cracked, it sucked, but it still was functional. Now, they fucked up, okay? I miss Steve Jobs. As much of a dick as he was, he did keep Apple products at the front edge of elegance and operability and reliability. At functionality as the sci-fi dream that smartphones are. And unfortunately, he passed on, and the competitors took full advantage of that. At any rate, so I have this one camera that works, and I'm running low on memory on all my devices, which is typical. I literally have hundreds of thousands of photos and videos that I've taken over the years. At any rate, so I'm able to record here, I believe, and it looks like there's still some unfortunate light scatter effects because of the camera not really working right, but this is functional at least. So I say all of that to say I got my shirt on inside out. Fuck you is what I have to say to that. At any rate, here you are at this date and time. It's 2022. The COVID pandemic has, for all intents and purposes, dissolved. Not in any small credit to Donald Trump and Operation Fast Track and the vaccine development that took place instantly. I mean, you know how many centuries it took to come up with stuff like the polio vaccine and other, you know, well-known vaccines were things that were developed over centuries and just layers of scientific research and just, you know, hard toil. And we have an unprecedented worldwide pandemic that wiped out millions of people, if the records are to be believed. I believe that they're not correct, that it's a smaller amount, but still I maintain that it was something we're talking about like a century type of event. In other words, 100 years from now, they'll be talking about the COVID-19 outbreak and the really remarkable things that happened as a result of that at the time that it took place. Far-reaching effects in ways that people don't even realize yet or haven't even considered. It all seems like a bad dream now behind us for the most part, except for the people who are still hanging on to it. We've reached herd immunity worldwide, more or less. We've reached inoculation percentage of the population worldwide now to the point, and we've had to take not just one shot for your COVID-19 immunity. You had to take 1, 2, 3 shots in total, and they had to be spaced out over time and not too soon, not too close to each other, and all kinds of very emblematic of the entire pandemic saga of COVID-19, coronavirus, and whatever they'll remember it, Kung flu, the China virus, the virus clearly came from China, and whether or not it was weaponized and deliberate, it was a source from China, and there was a certain amount of negligence and malpractice in the handling of extreme danger that manifests itself, whether or not intentionally. No good crisis goes to waste for those of us who are aware of the fact that people will change their ways and will suddenly correct course and work in a way that's good for humanity as majority of us. There are so many confusing issues in this time and so many exaggerated kabuki theater-like plays that go into the believisms and the propagandization of our kids in school and through all the mass media and whatnot. But we all know what happened to the mass media, don't we? For the longest time, the far left, probably sourced by the communist Soviets in the Cold War days, infiltrated every bit of America and in the highest halls of power and into every tiny corner and crevice so very, very calculatedly. And they were the source of that slow indoctrination through the media and through educational systems and every form of formation of minds, like movies and TVs and the news and what's believed to be the cultural commonly held facts that come from no other source than you saw it in the movie, you read it in the book, you saw it on the news, you learned it in school. So anybody who wanted to infiltrate a system would simply go to all those sources and insert themselves into them, so specifically to the youth and to education, because you're looking at the future then. I think they're the source of a lot of really anti-American propaganda that was ingrained into people over the 70s, 80s, and 90s. During the whole Cold War, that full thing was in effect. Go rent the TV show The Americans, it's called The Americans, based on the true Russian spy operatives that were in the U.S. operating at every level, right into the FBI and into all of our highest, most powerful institutions in the United States, right into, and openly really proclaimed what they wanted to do, which was to take over one of the parties, two-party system. And they did. They took over the left side, they took over the Democrats, and they infiltrated them. And McCarthy was the worst thing that could have ever happened to people who wanted to keep anti-Americanism in the form of covert communism from doing exactly what it did during the Cold War from happening. Stalin's wet dream was McCarthy, because he disarmed true and valid credibility of mitigating those communist operatives who were doing the kind of things he described. But I think that he ultimately was one of the communists, and he did exactly what he did, which was to once and for all end the ability to believe that there could be a subversive force well organized, which is credible and logical, by a man acting like a madman representing the cause of sussing it out and solving the problem. What better of a way to disarm the Inquisition into a problem than to come out as a tyrant madman in the cause of solving the problem and creating an epic and an era which anybody who believed that the communist subversion was a logical conclusion, known fact and motivation of that entity through the entire process. But people like McCarthy and their very strong propaganda efforts in the United States allowed them to do their entire operation over the last 50 or 60 years after World War II and the commencement of the Cold War, which is, you could credit Patton and some other sort of cocksure Western political, highly visible people like Patton and certain English characters, that when it was clear that the Germans were going to be beaten and that the Allies were going to win the war, the Allies looked at each other and said, how do we split up the world after we kicked Germans' ass? And the Russians went, hello, over here, we had millions die in Great War defending against German invasion of Stalingrad. And we had so many millions die and starved to death in effort of beating. And so English and Americans say to how we split up world after end of beating Nazis. Excuse me, Russia over here? Anybody think maybe all the sacrifice we made in Great War, all the way to Berlin and end of war, to end every bit of leftover Nazis in Germany? And you say how we split between UK and America, the world, at the end of war? Oh well, we see how it is now. Well, you guys go ahead and have fun putting everything together with the UN and the NATO and all this, and we'll go ahead and hunker down over here, and we know who's. Now I get like a Spanish accent going. I lost the Russian accent, but whatever. All this to say that the pandemic brought all these people with aspirations to taking over the world to take advantage of the chaos the pandemic had, and they took every last drop of influence and every bit of power it could be gained in ways of changing the world and seizing the means of production, crash the capitalism. Who does that sound like? Doesn't that sound like the Soviets, evil empire of communism, where a machine of government crushed human soul into number and cast out all human rights? And we give to you what we think you need. And we take everything. A government, we have everything. Power to the people. You peasant, if you fuck with me, I send you to Siberia, your family disappears, I crush you. And only power is in the hands. This is all well-known stuff that someone of my age was aware of during the Cold War. Exactly who the communists and the Soviets were, and all their posturing and all their parades with their missiles and you know, all of that shit. And threats to the US and always the enemy, the villain, you know, of Russia. And the hammer and sickle, we will bury you and crush you. You stupid Americans are so weak. You know, all that kind of stuff. They didn't go away. Do you think the fall of the Soviet Union was legit? You fools. In the highly concentrated powers of the Soviet Union knows that is known the perestroika was a deception, and is known as the long deception. Yeah? They pretend to crash and fail. Meantime, they collapse in on themselves, and you see people like Putin now, armed with the highest, most advanced technology, super hypersonic missiles and the MiG-24, 34, Mikoyan-Gurevich, the most advanced tank technology, better than even the German Panthers right now, the Leopards, and it claims to be better than the M1, the Americans, most advanced tank in the world. They have one now that could easily beat it, supposedly. But we see what they're doing in Ukraine. We see what they're doing in Ukraine. And under Putin, who posed as not someone who wanted to bring back Stalin, but one who wanted to bring back the czars and religion and faith in God and honesty and we're not so much with the gay guys and all the transvestite the terminology pronoun. Take that and shove up your ass. And go out there and fight and survive in Mother Russia in the wintertime with a bear eating your ass and you're asking what its fucking pronoun is. Wait a minute, I'm getting it like that Scottish accent. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this entire recording. The Scottish accent. I have been channeling the Scottish guy when I've been going through difficult times and highly stressed out, and for reasons that we'll go into later and that we know about already, or a particularly challenging, perfect storm of events happening right now in my 50th year of life on terra firma in the year 2022, and the 9th of April. So I'm coming here and taking over Jesse right now, and I'm going to start talking to you. That's the reason why he's making the recording here. That's because I had something to say again. My man here, Jesse, is a very strong person, both mentally, physically, and more importantly, spiritually. He's an old soul, and he took his time in the time between lives before he chose this physical form which is a far more advanced form of being, of physicality. There was genetic manipulation before birth, both germline and during the pregnancy. There were alterations done to the physical form to form a new experimental version. It was for all means to the common man of this day and age, and even the educated, to discern the difference, the slight little differences in the physical form of the entity that he inhabits, his spirit, his soul, which is sitting back and taking a break right now while I'm talking. And Jesse came out at this time for a particular reason and incarnated in the form of his physical form that you see here before you on the recording. And it was meant to do quite a few different things, because his mission here on Earth, on this form at this time, had a very ambitious new thinking involved in the planning of a lifetime of a typical human being in this form right now.